Tonight, Hurricane Harvey drowns Houston.
I'm just trying to focus on right now, 'cause it's just scary.
Trump defends his pardon.
In the middle of a hurricane, even though it was a Friday evening, I assumed the ratings would be far higher than they would be normally.
And tying wildlife die-offs to climate change. In the face of growing international pressure and sanctions, North Korea test-fired yet another ballistic missile, which flew over the Japanese island of Hokkaido before crashing into the sea. Japan treated the launch as a potential attack, and the Japanese Fire and Disaster Management Agency warned the public to seek shelter. North Korea now tests missiles regularly, but the last time it sent one over Japanese land was in 2009. President Trump is restoring the full scope of a program that allows police departments to receive and use surplus military equipment like armored vehicles and grenade launchers. President Obama limited the program in 2015 after the heavily armed police response to the riots in Ferguson, Missouri, saying the military gear could make the police feel like a, quote, occupying force.
These restrictions that had been imposed went too far. We will not put superficial concerns above public safety. We will do our best to get you what you need.
A German male nurse already serving a life sentence for 2 murders is now accused of killing 84 more people at 2 clinics from 1999 to 2002 and 2003 to 2005. 40-year-old Niels Hergel, who covered his face when he appeared in court in 2014, previously admitted to deliberately injecting patients with deadly drugs and then trying to save them so he could play the hero. Investigators say the number of victims could be even higher because some patients were cremated. Armed men claiming to represent the indigenous Mapuche people in Chile hijacked and burned 29 logging trucks in an escalating conflict with forestry companies. Mapuche leaders have accused companies of taking their land and draining natural resources, but said non-indigenous people with political motives may be responsible for the incidents. The world's strictest law against plastic pollution went into effect today in Kenya. From this point forward, anyone producing, selling, or even using a plastic bag will face 4 years in prison or pay a fine between $19,000 and $38,000. The government insists ordinary citizens won't be harmed and that the law will target manufacturers.
You find them in our water bodies, we find them littering our landscapes. They're also ingested by our livestock.
Hurricane Harvey has dumped close to a year's worth of rain in parts of Texas, or more than 9 trillion gallons of water, unleashing catastrophic flooding and destruction unprecedented in scale.
This is going to cost a great deal on so many different levels.
At least 8 people have died, and 7 million people, 1/4 of Texas's population, live in the 18 counties that have already been declared disaster zones. The storm's costs are projected to be in the tens of billions. The greatest losses will be in Houston, parts of which are now subject to mandatory evacuation orders. But large swaths of the flat, flood-prone city, including crucial transportation infrastructure, are now submerged by impassable floodwaters. Shelters in the city have taken in tens of thousands of people and are reaching capacity.
I don't know what's waiting for us at home. I'm imagining all of these horrible scenarios, like this water is going to make our building collapse, our roof collapse. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm just trying to focus on right now, 'cause it's just scary.
Harvey's destruction may have already surpassed that of Hurricane Allison, which devastated Houston in 2001. And since then, the sprawling metro area has added more than 2 million residents, many of their homes built on grasslands that might have helped absorb the flood's impact.
Oh yeah, gotcha.
Levees holding back the Brazos River could fail, and the Army Corps of Engineers has started releasing waters from reservoirs designed to protect the city from storm surges, flooding nearby homes to prevent dams from collapsing. FEMA expects to get 450,000 requests for federal assistance and has sent 1,800 staff members to the area, including 14 urban search and rescue teams. Governor Greg Abbott has deployed the entire Texas National Guard, 12,000 troops, to respond to the disaster.
This is a place that Texas and FEMA will be involved in for a long, long time. We need to recognize it's going to be a new normal. It will be a new and different normal for this entire region. But we will not stop until we get as far as we can.
For now, many of those trapped by the water are being rescued by civilians in boats, large trucks, and whatever's at hand.
We're just trying to keep the faith and stay strong and stay positive. We're sticking together as a unit.
As the storm bore down on Texas on Friday, President Trump made good on a nakedly political promise, pardoning former Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He defended the decision and its timing at a news conference today.
Actually, in the middle of a hurricane, even though it was a Friday evening, I assumed the ratings would be far higher than they would be normally.
Arpaio had been convicted of criminal contempt of court, essentially for refusing to stop systemic racial profiling of Latinos by his deputies. Arpaio is one of the most polarizing figures in the immigration debate, which puts him right in step with the commander-in-chief.
The president's decision to pardon Joe Arpaio came as no surprise to immigrant rights activists in Arizona, who've been fighting Arpaio and his policies for years. They say that from the moment Trump announced his candidacy in 2015 by calling Mexican immigrants rapists and drug smugglers, they knew that Trump could become a powerful ally for Arpaio. I spoke to Carlos Garcia, executive director of Puente, Arizona, an immigrant rights group in Maricopa County, minutes after the pardon was announced on Friday evening.
We knew Trump was going to tie himself to Arpaio, pardon him, and push those same policies that Arpaio had here in Maricopa County. For us, it cements President Trump as a white supremacist president, as a president that stands by people like Sheriff Arpaio and attacks people in our community just like Arpaio did.
Arpaio gave Trump an important early endorsement.
I'm here to endorse a great patriot, and it's just easy to endorse him because everything I believe in, he's doing, and he's going to do it when he becomes president.
And the two had already worked together to promote the idea that President Obama wasn't born in the US. So the pardon wasn't exactly shocking. But it does tell us something about how Trump sees executive power. The ability that the Constitution gives the president to pardon people is virtually unlimited, and presidential pardons have pretty much always been controversial. But there are still some things that make this pardon unusual. Presidents in the past have typically tried to keep their pardons low profile. For example, they often wait until the final days of their administration so they don't have to deal with too much political blowback. But perhaps the most important thing is the fact that Trump pardoned Arpaio for violating a court injunction intended to protect the constitutional rights of Americans. Martin Reddish, a professor of law at Northwestern University, says that's something that hasn't happened before, and the implications are huge.
The only way the courts can effectively enforce the Bill of Rights protections on the executive branch is through an injunction. If the president can use the pardon power as a weapon, basically to insulate himself and all other government officers from judicial control, then the president's all powerful. There's no limits left on the president's power.
In other words, the pardon of Joe Arpaio looks less like an expression of mercy and forgiveness and more like a naked attempt on Trump's part to circumvent the courts and the Constitution to protect his allies. Trump is famous for putting a high premium on loyalty and for throwing red meat to his base, who love Arpaio. What Trump doesn't care about are institutional traditions, including judicial independence and the rule of law. Which means that, especially as the Russia investigation heats up, more divisive pardons could be in store.
Pardoning Arpaio wasn't the president's only big move on Friday night. He also issued a memorandum adding detail to the vague ban on transgender people in the military he'd announced on Twitter a month ago. The memo ordered an indefinite hold on trans people joining up, announced that the military would stop paying for transition surgeries in March of next year, and directed the Secretary of Defense to decide what to do about trans troops already in the ranks. Soldiers like Jamie Moyer, a military policeman who served in Afghanistan and been on active duty for 7 years. Ellie Reeve met up with him on base in Washington State.
So General Mattis has some flexibility in what policy to implement in the next 6 months. Do you have any ideas of what you think he might do or what you think he should do?
I think it seems like we have a decent amount of his support. And a video was posted on like Army WTF moments. It was of him basically keep your head up and America's not in the right place and we're going to get it in the right place.
And you're buying time. You're a great example for our country right now. It's got some problems. You know it and I know it. It's got problems that we don't have in the military. And you just hold the line, my fine young soldiers, sailors, airmen.
That, to me, was a bit comforting and was saying we should just keep going, keep doing what we're doing, and everything will fall into place like it's supposed to.
What if they would no longer pay for any treatment related to transitioning? How would that affect you?
The worst part would be trying to find a doctor off post to prescribe my testosterone. That would be the worst and hardest part, is just because it's a new doctor bill and finding a doctor that you know, I like and that's caught up educationally about how it all works. I just really wish that we had an official answer already. My wife and I like to plan everything, so you know, my plan is to be a careerist and to stay in for at least the 20 years and then get out of the military. And I need to know as soon as possible if that's not going to be a feasible option for me, so that way I can start making other plans.
Plan a whole new life.
Exactly. We'll support and defend anything that's put out. I'll adhere to any policy that's made. But I can't adhere to something if it's not a policy yet.
India is bracing for more violence after a powerful spiritual guru was sentenced to 20 years in prison for raping 2 of his female followers. Gurmeet Singh is the flamboyant leader of the Dera Sacha Sauda sect, and his tens of millions of supporters call him God-man. Singh's conviction last week led to riots, which left at least 38 people dead and hundreds injured. India's military has been called in to contain an army of enraged fanatics demanding the release of their guru. India's security forces are keeping people away from the jail where Singh is being held. When the sentence came down, the judge went to the prison to deliver it, rather than hold a hearing in open court. A curfew is in place in 2 northern provinces to prevent more riots, and police have been told to shoot troublemakers on sight. Dera Sacha Sauda is a massively popular, quasi-religious sect that promises to connect its followers to God if they follow all the teachings of the guru. Singh has been involved in the movement since he was a boy, and he took over as its leader when he was 23. Now 50, his brand of spiritual leadership and unapologetic wealth put him more in line with a hip-hop star than a traditional religious leader. But the sect has powerful appeal, in part because it's open to people from all castes, and the group claims 60 million members. Singh has major clout and close ties to the ruling party, but the slick veneer could be covering up widespread sexual abuse. Singh is currently being investigated for 2 murders and the castration of 400 male followers, and there's speculation that more victims of sexual abuse may be about to come forward. The guru has always denied any wrongdoing. Anurag Tripathi is an investigative journalist who's been reporting on Dera Sacha Sauda for a decade. Getting members to talk has been a struggle.
For 2 months, we were trying to talk to people, but such was the fear that nobody was willing to come on the camera. But in the meantime, we got enough information and we realized that it's just not one isolated case of a rape.
Singh's lawyers say he'll appeal to a higher court to overturn the conviction. And in the eyes of his followers, he's utterly blameless.
करोड़ों लोग तो इसलिए जा रहे हैं ना क्योंकि वो अच्छी शिक्षा देते हैं सबको. अब आप ये देखो करोड़ों लोग इनसे जुड़े हुए.
हमें बाबा जी का सारा ही अच्छा लगता बेटा हमको बहुत दुख आ रहा, बहुत गुस्सा आ रहा. अब झूठे आरोप लगाए गए, सच्चे नहीं है, झूठे सारे.
If you live in Alaska and come across a dead animal, you call Kathy Burek.
That should keep that stuff safe from any goo. This is my necropsy gear, pre-stinkified gear, back brace, knee pads, sample kit. All right, I'll just load it up.
Kathy is one of 3 veterinary pathologists in all of Alaska. She's hired by various local and federal agencies to examine the carcasses of wild animals.
All right, that should do it.
That means she's the person who sounds the alarm when animal populations unexpectedly decline because of things like climate change.
What we do is try to figure out why animals die. I work with a lot of different wildlife species up here: humpbacks, fin whales, beluga whales, polar bears.
Kathy has studied hundreds of animal deaths. But in recent years, she's noticed things that are hard to ignore.
There are indications that we are seeing changes in the environment. With climate change, there's several things that can happen that can cause increased disease incidences in different places. You have animals moving, you have vectors moving, disease agents being able to survive better in the environment.
In 2015, for instance, Kathy recorded a worrisome trend. Sea otters were dying at 5 times the rate they normally do, and her research showed that the increase was linked to unusually warm water. Alaska isn't the only place experiencing an uptick in animal deaths. Mass animal die-offs have been on the rise everywhere from the Great Barrier Reef to the Siberian tundra. Last year, in the Russian Arctic, scientists linked an anthrax outbreak to a pathogen released from rapidly thawing ice. It infected thousands of reindeer, which people rely on for food, and caused the death of at least 1 boy. Investigations like the ones that Kathy performs played a key role in figuring out what happened.
So the hazards are that you're dealing with a lot of sharp instruments. The other hazard for people that haven't been around dead animals is fainting. You know, it's kind of a normal human reaction when you see the innards of things and things smell a little bit not so good. Some people pass out. Yay, it's there. We got an animal. The biggest thing that people misunderstand about my job is that they've been watching too much CSI or Quincy or Bones, and they'll expect that we're going to get an answer like an hour. And these things take a while. Sometimes you don't figure out the absolute answer. You'll have to see what the blubber thickness is, but you can also see the shoulder bones very prominently. Well, maybe it's an adult male.
Kathy is careful not to attribute everything she's seeing to climate change. She approaches every carcass with an open mind.
All right, so I think the next thing is to try to roll them. All right, so it is a boy. Yep.
So, as with any dead animal, the samples she takes from the sea lion will get tested for bacteria, viruses, and contaminants. That data will, in turn, help authorities and scientists keep track of local, and in some cases, global trends.
Look at how little fat there is here. It's just crazy. We don't know the absolute cause of death at this point. So now we got to do sampling. It's difficult to talk about how climate change is going to affect or is affecting particular species. We'll just do like a bag and a tag. But we hope that by pulling together all these little individual cases, we can eventually have a bigger picture we can talk about. All right, I'm done.
That big picture isn't just important for maintaining animal populations.
Toss in the liver.
And Kathy knows that. Every time she approaches a carcass, she keeps an eye out for diseases that could infect humans, too.
I think people should care about what's going on with wildlife species because they can be an indicator of what's going on in the environment, and it can reflect on what might potentially happen to us.
Hi, I'm Benny Safdie, and this is Josh Safdie.
No, I'm Benny Safdie. No, I'm Benny Safdie.
Our father makes this mistake all the time. We've given into the moniker as the Safdie brothers.
Let's switch it again. This is Josh Safdie. I'm Benny Safdie. We co-directed Good Time.
Just watch the shit on your face. You're on the floor. Nick, what the fuck are you doing? Get in the sink. Jesus Christ. Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Come on! Take it off.
Good Time is a movie about a romantic psychopath who robs a bank with his developmentally disabled brother, and it goes terribly wrong, and one of them ends up in jail, and the other one ends up on the run, and he spends the duration of the movie trying to get him out. It's a heist movie on acid in a weird way. I was in my hotel room, which I was sharing with my producer, and I received an email from Rob Pattinson basically saying like, hey, I don't know why, but I feel this innate connection to you, and I would love to talk to you about making something if you're interested. I mean, he literally said to us, like, listen, whatever you're working on next, I want to be a part of, even if it's catering. And, of course, that's a romantic thing to say, but it meant something to us. Rob isn't American and he's not from New York, so we had to kind of build the character. Writing the character background was almost harder than writing the screenplay. And
I think you banged out like 3 different scripts.
Yeah, there was a lot of versions. I would send Rob a script and I'd be like, actually, hold on, I'm gonna send you a new draft, and like 5 days later it'd be a completely new script. All within the same world though. So, but yeah, it was a very arduous experience. So I don't normally, I've never really done storyboards.
There were certain scenes that we had to do.
Well, we're working with stunt coordinators and SFX companies. Like they actually demanded storyboards because they all need to be able to see it and reference it visually. We did a helicopter sequence in the movie. I told them, I was like, all right, I have some plans of things we need to shoot. And they're like, okay, cool. So I'm like pulling this thing out while we're up in the air. And I was like, no, guys, we got to like get down low next to the camera, next to the car, so we can pull out and expose the Ferris wheel. I was like putting it in front of his face like this. I was like that. He's like, move that out of my way. And, and I had all these like print ups from like the O.J. Simpson chase because we had a white SUV that we were following for a while. And I'm hearing JFK, air traffic control, yelling at the helicopter saying like, helicopter 4793, get out, clear the airspace immediately, clear the airspace. And I was like, are they talking to us? He said, yes, look to your right. And I looked to my right and there's a 747 that's just like pulling into JFK. And he's like, that's gonna hit us. We have one take. So we were like radioing down to the car and I was like, all right, just make sure first frame is this. And he literally had it lined up perfectly and we got one take, we had it.
There's movies where the screen comes to the audience, and then there's movies where the audience is brought onto the screen, like almost against their will. He's like, what are you gonna do? Which one are you gonna make? And I think the ones where you're kind of like brought up to the screen, like almost like an alien invasion, like taking over your body, like, oh my God, what's happening right now? That's what we kind of want to do, and those are the movies we want to make.
That's Vice News Tonight for Monday, August 28th.